Dr. Carol Swain has an amazing personal story that she will tell you here momentarily. I would say, too, that after talking to her and looking into her bio, I would think that she may be perhaps one of the truest representations of the American dream that I've ever personally had a chance to talk to. Dr. Carol Swain is an overcomer. She's an achiever. She's a believer. She is somebody who has truly set aside the idea of setbacks in life and said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and moved forward. That being said, she has degrees from Virginia Tech, from UNC Chapel Hill, from Yale University. She has been a career professor at such vaunted institutions as Duke and Princeton and Vanderbilt. She is a noted author. She was appointed by President George W. Bush to the National Council on the Humanities. She was a co-chair for Donald Trump's 1776 commission. She's often seen providing commentary on national news networks. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Carol Swain as our keynote speaker.
It's always great to be in God's country. And there are some states, and Alabama is one of those states, that has held the line, I believe, when it comes to America's Judeo-Christian values. And when I think about where we stand today and the victories we've had in court, I can truly say that we are at the stage where we could truly be the people, which is a play on We the People, which is also the title of this book. And your theme is the subtitle, A Call to Reclaim America's Faith and Promise. I believe that we could go a long way towards turning things around. But as I said earlier, I believe that there are no man-made solutions to what ails the world. We can put on a Band-Aid, we can slow things down, but at the end of the day, we had the book, we know how things end. And so thank you so much for having me here, and I will move as quickly as I can to get this ball rolling. I have lived the American dream. As you can see, I'm Black, and in America, we're told that Black people are born disadvantaged. I was born into poverty, one of 12 children, no indoor plumbing, two-room shack, very little food. And that's a picture of the real shack that's in southwestern Virginia, and this is how it looked maybe about 6 to 7 years ago when I went with a reporter. It's longer than that. It was 2002 when I published a book. They sent a news team to see if I really came from the kind of poverty that I described. The reporter who worked for Newhouse, after he saw where I grew up, we visited Booker T. Washington's birthplace, the slave quarters, and he wrote in his article that after seeing where I was born, that the slave quarters didn't look so stark. According to social scientists, someone like me, underprivileged, I'm supposed to be a victim, I'm going nowhere, I'm doomed to fail. And yet, I didn't. Which goes to show that they don't know what they're talking about. I was pushed into academia. It was not my first choice of a career. I wanted to manage a store at the mall, but I was pushed into academia by people that looked a lot like some of the older white men in this room. My first degree was at a community college. I have a degree in business, Roanoke College, criminal justice. Do you want to know how I chose criminal justice, young people? I knew that math was not my strong suit. I knew what my strong suit was, so I went through the college catalog looking for a field that had the least amount of math that I would find interesting. I graduated magna cum laude, where I worked in 40 hours a week, nights and weekends at the community college library, which was a perfect job for a student because no one uses the community college library nights and weekends. I graduated with that criminal justice degree, and one of the things I realized was that I did not want a career in criminal justice. Like a lot of other black people, I was going to work for the government. Now, I can say that, but, well, I was going to work for the government. And so I went to Virginia Tech to do public policy. And while I was there, I became a research assistant. I started working with professors. And that was when I first started giving conference papers. But I was planning to get the master's degree and get my government job. But my professors pressured me to continue my education because they said there was this critical need for black professors, and if I could, I should. I was so shy. Being a professor would have been the last thing that I would have ever selected for myself. I applied for jobs, didn't get any of the jobs I applied for. It was a recession of the 1980s, so there was nothing else to do, young people, but to apply to graduate school. I applied to UNC Chapel Hill and Duke. UNC immediately admitted me, gave me a scholarship. It was $11,000 a year, which was a lot of money back then. And I couldn't believe that I was being paid just to be a student, and, you know, research assistant, teaching, that type of thing. I went off to, I got my PhD. I taught at Duke for 1 year while I was finishing up my PhD. And then that other degree, Yale law degree, I got that after I was a tenured professor at Princeton, between the time Vanderbilt hired me and when I actually showed up for the job. So I taught 28 years. 28 long, hard years. And I don't even know that I was called to be in academia, because a lot of things, you know, like I was shy. I didn't get over my shyness until I was in my 40s. But I was in, I went to Princeton, got early tenure. I did it went up in the third year, got it in the fourth year. It normally takes 7 years. When I was hired, I told them I was doing it in 3 years, and everyone said yes. They were recruiting me. So everyone was sure that I could do it. I got signing bonuses offered from everywhere I applied. And I was a hot shot. And not only was I a hot shot on paper, I had a Harvard press contract on the dissertation project. I was, let me do the math here. I was about 40 pounds thinner. And I had a black leather miniskirt I wore sometimes. And I had a lot of self-confidence, but I was still shy. And I was a single-minded seeker of tenure. And I got the early tenure. My life was, after I got the tenure, it did not fulfill me as a person. Even though my first book won the highest prize a political scientist can win, the equivalent of the Nobel Prize for a political scientist, the Career Award. It used to be called the Woodrow Wilson Prize in Politics and International Affairs. They changed the name in the last few years because Woodrow Wilson is out. I can't remember what the name of that prize is now, but I won 3 national prizes for my first book, including one for the best book on Congress in 2 years. And the book was Black Faces, Black Interests, the Representation of African Americans in Congress. It was the book that Claudine Gay, former president of Harvard University, was so fond of. And so, like, I was at the top of my game as far as recognition, and I was miserable. And, you know, if I'm giving my testimony, that sort of sent me on a journey, a spiritual quest that culminated in me having a Christian conversion experience in the late 1990s. And then I became a devout believer in 1999. And that was after I'd accepted a job at Vanderbilt. And they hired one person and a different person showed up. the person that showed up was a new believer. And as I grew in my faith, I became more and more conservative. As I grew in my faith, I moved politically from being a Democrat, lifelong Democrat. I became an independent for a number of years. And then 2009, this was after President Bush had appointed me to the Tennessee Advisory Committee to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission and the National Endowment for the Humanities. And President Obama renewed one of those appointments. So I've had a Bush appointment, an Obama appointment, and a Trump appointment. And so as I grew in my faith, I became more and more conservative. And for people that have followed the story, in 2015, I wrote an opinion piece criticizing Islam. And pretty much I said that Islam was not like other religions, that unless I was criticizing Obama for not vetting the people he was bringing in this country, but I said that Islam was not like other religions, that they needed to be monitored, and that they needed to pretty much, if they come to America, they had to be American as far as our constitutional rights. That set off a firestorm. And so that was 2015, January 15th, 2015 was when it was published. January 7th, 2015 was when the Charlie Hebdo terrorist attack occurred in Paris. And so I was very much like the rest of the world. We were shocked about the murder of the cartoonist. And at that time, Obama was importing a lot of Muslims into the country, and he was not vetting people. So we knew that terrorists, or what we should have known. At any rate, I wrote my opinion piece. It created a firestorm. And 2 years later, I made the decision to take early retirement from Vanderbilt. And that was my decision to make, because I felt like I could not be my best self in a situation that I felt was very hostile. And it's just amazing. You could criticize anything, but you couldn't criticize Islam. So I left academia, and I recreated myself, and now the world is my classroom. So, welcome to my classroom. And class is now in session. We're going to talk a little bit about the Be the People book. I started this book in 2009 when during the Obama presidency. I was so disturbed by the fact that in a country back then, 78% of Americans professed to be Christian. And I was so perplexed as a new believer on fire for the Lord. How could it be in a country where 78% of the people professed to be Christian, that we were electing the kind of politicians we were getting the kind of policies. And as I pondered this, it just seemed to me that either people didn't know the tenets of their religion, or they didn't know what was happening in the country, or the Constitution. And so this book was really written primarily for people that I felt like they needed to know what was taking place. And as a consequence, in each of the chapters, I talk about the ones that own policy. One is about America's religious roots, because there are people that argue that America was not founded as a Christian nation, and so I addressed that early on. But in the very first chapter, I talked about how Orwellian our country was becoming. And at that time, President Obama, his Pentagon had proposed creating an office of strategic deception to disseminate information to America's enemies. And so it was supposed to be used abroad, but it was all about deception. And there was like a hue and a cry across the nation, as it should have been, and then it disappeared. You didn't hear anything about it, and I don't think you can find anything online. And during this era, if you found something online and you didn't print it out very quickly, and this is way back in 2009, it would disappear. And so you had to print it out quickly. And that was when the Obama administration, the National Security Agency, they were forming the alliance with Google. And Google had been spying on members of Congress. They had that Google truck car that goes around, and they were scanning the hard drives of members of Congress that didn't have everything encrypted. It's all in the book. And Obama was seeking permission to for the military to be able to assassinate American citizens suspected of terrorism. And we know that he got the ability to do that. The New York Times did an article some years ago with him and the list that he would go down this list of people and choose who would live or die. That was many years later, but I can tell you in chapter 1 of Be the People, that was part of what I was warning about. And I better speed up because I wrote this. It's call to action to the We the People. And so now that we've won the court case by the Supreme Court, you can be the people. We know that the Constitution is our blueprint. The red flags that I saw was Google, and everything was Orwellian. And each of these chapters ends with things for people to do. And I'm going to read to you what I wrote. I said, arm yourself, action points. Because I was so tired of people on the news and various people telling you how bad things were, but no one told you what to do. So you just went away just feeling worse. Arm yourself with information about how closely the actions and events we see happening in this nation coincide with life depicted in George Orwell's 1984, a novel published in 1949. Set up a reading group to read and discuss 1984 and Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, subtitle, A Pragmatic Primer for Realistic Radicals. And that has been the Bible of the left. And then I said, if you're comfortable doing so, write out a prayer to the omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent Creator, thanking him for having the situation under control. Isaiah 40:15 reads, behold, the nations are like a drop from a bucket and are counted as the dust on the scales. Behold, God takes up the coastlines like fine dust. And then I had, and I believe they're still there on my website, study questions for groups. But that was how I ended my first chapter. And in that chapter also, I pointed to this interview. Now, this is in my book. This is 2009. This is before I write the op-ed piece that ended my career. President Obama said, if you actually took the number of Muslim Americans, we'd be one of the largest Muslim countries in the world. This was 2009, and it earned him the Pants on Fire rating for telling a blatant lie. But if you watch the Obama administration, what did they do? They poured Muslims into this country. They planted these things. And back in 2002, I wrote another book, Don't Get Alarmed by the Title, The New White Nationalism in America, Its Challenge to Integration. It had a chapter on religion. And in that chapter, I criticized President Bush's faith-based initiative because I knew that the next president would be able to do what he wanted with that money. Well, the next president was Obama. Some of the black pastors that followed President Bush, as soon as the presidency switched, they were going with the money, right? Right? I said some of the pastors, not just black, that followed Bush and endorsed him, but the black pastors got a lot of attention for doing so. They just switched over to Obama. But under our Constitution, you can't discriminate among or across religions. You're not supposed to be able to do so. So what happened was some of the money, the faith-based money, that Bush set up the infrastructure, and that money was used to build mosques and to support religion and transcendental meditation and all sorts of things that are not part of the religious heritage of a Judeo-Christian nation. So, with this book, so it has 8 chapters, and this is a summary of some of the things I say in the end about how you reclaim America. And I'm going to read this to you too briefly because this book was published in 2011. I thought it was going to change the outcome of the 2012 election, but it didn't. Steps Towards Reclaiming America. The 10 Commandments, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution of the United States of America and its Bill of Rights reveal the power to take back our country. For that reason, I've added these documents as appendices in the back of the book. And then I say, here are some steps for reclaiming America. And the steps, I said, make a concerted effort to know the biblical principles that motivated so many of our forebears. The 10 Commandments, they're part of this. And if you know anything about the laws of our nation, many of our laws were based on the Levitical laws or the 10 Commandments. And then I said, read the Declaration of Independence to see why our founding fathers were willing to die for these values and principles. Read the Bill of Rights, read the Constitution, get your news from more than one source. And so that means you don't just watch Fox News or The Blaze. We can go down our favorite lists of conservative sources to really know what's taking place in the world. You need to get your news from many different sources, and somewhere in between, there's the truth. And then I said, double check the information you receive before you email. And now, back then it was email, but before you post it on social media, and I myself have had sometimes to correct myself because there are people that will put out fake information, fake articles, they look like truth, to discredit, I believe, conservatives or discredit some groups. And so I said, always double check that information before you forward it, and then register to vote and keep the House and Senate switchboard numbers handy, and then prepare to be ridiculed and persecuted and even martyred. And you go, ooh, that happens in other countries. Well, I believe that it can happen here too. Your cost as a Christian could cost you your life, especially if you're an activist. And then I concluded with, accept the fact that no matter what Christians do, it may be too late to save the United States. And so pretty much that's how the book ends. But each chapter ended with something that you could actually do that might make a difference, that would be part of being the people. And in conclusion, I wrote, Christians should not despair about the challenging times in which we live or the possibility of God's harsh judgment on our nation. Our task is to fulfill our calling as believers. Our first and highest priority is to focus on our relationship with God. Second, our role is to strengthen our families and churches. And lastly, we should help inform, educate, and enlighten the minds of fellow believers who may have strayed into unbiblical thinking because of inadequate knowledge. And when it comes to politics and whatever you're called to do, you should do what God is leading you to do in whatever arena, but God should always be first. Thank you. Now, that part of our class is dismissed. And so I gave you pretty much an overview of this book and why I wrote it, why I thought it was important. Now, some other things that I'm doing to be the people. One is, these are some resources that are out there for you to peruse. And this is the big thing I'm doing. Next month, we're having a constitutional camp for middle school children in Nashville, and that's not too far to drive. It's a one-day event, and we're having, as part of that, the American Journey Project. They're bringing artifacts that students can, young people can actually handle these artifacts. And we also have people from the American Historical Society, Abigail Adams and Thomas Jefferson will be there to talk about history, about Abigail talks about her concerns about the Constitution and the nation, and then Thomas Jefferson talks about the Constitution. And so that's a part of it. And then we have the teachers and instructors that will meet with the students in small groups. And at the end of the day, they get a signed copy, I think, of the Declaration of Independence. And we have lots of fun things planned. It's $35, but we have plenty of scholarships if someone would like to come. So that's something that I started a year ago. And I think it's very important for us to reach the middle school children before they get to high school, that they should really know the Constitution. And I can tell you that the homeschool kids are just knocking it out of the park. They know a lot of things that that young people don't necessarily get in public schools. And so this is how you reach me. I'm very active on X. I have 376,000 followers. That's the same as Twitter. Instagram, I'm having a lot of fun with Instagram. And so please follow me. And before Phil takes the stage, it's my understanding that this is a fundraiser, and that means that you write a check. And because I'm so honored to be here, I would like to make the first contribution. And I'm probably going to do this badly, but this is my contribution. I'm going to make a contribution of $500, and someone that was planning to give $25 needs to match it. Thank you.